Good evening. I welcome all of you, especially Dr. Subhash Gupta ji, Dr. Bharat Gopal ji, and CA Ritu Bhatia ji on today's subject and post-COVID care and health issue. As you know that on a very before yesterday, last Sunday, we organized another program on the same subject, and it was very grand successful, and lot of persons praised it, viewed our video, and give appreciation. And on being this, I requested once again Ritu Bhatia ji kindly manage one more webinar on the same subject. So Ritu Bhatia ji took very well initiative and managed our board doctors, invited them, requested them. He kindly apprised us after the post-COVID issue, and they accepted our invitation. Thank you, sir. I welcome you. And with this, I request Ritu Bhatia ji kindly welcome Dr. Saab and introduce both the doctor, and let's start.
Yeah,
Over to you, ji.
good evening, everyone. Let me introduce both doctors one by one. Dr. Subhash Gupta ji, a senior cardiologist in Maharaja Agastyan Hospital for almost 3 decades, helping society and in need. He is actively involved, and his expertise and vast experience is sought after in many COVID-related activities and treatment committees in the hospital and other places also. Secondly, Dr. Bharat Gopal, internationally recognized pulmonologist and having clinical experience of more than 2 decades in the field of respiratory disorders, nasal, bronchial, allergy, sleep disorder, respiratory infection like TB and COVID, special interest in controlling and managing difficult asthma COVID patients, lung issues, and involved as invigilator in many clinical trials. So I welcome Dr. Gupta and Dr. Bharat Gopal to the webinar. Dr. Gupta, sir.
Yeah, I am ready.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, please.
Yes. Good evening to every participant, and I will like to thank Sri Rajesh Agarwal ji and CA Ritu Bhatia, who is also our Chief Financial Officer in Maharaja Agastyan Hospital, to give us an opportunity to interact with people who are intellectual like you. And I am sure the content which will be sharing with you will not be confined to you, but you will share it to many other persons, because you have public dealing with so many persons, and it will help the society as a whole in this noble cause during this pandemic. I will like to just briefly restrict to my subjects, followed by Dr. Bharat Gopal. Then we will like to have interactive sessions so that we can answer the individual queries for public at large to these things. So we are facing this global pandemic of the century of COVID-19 infections, and millions of the people across the globe are affected with COVID-19 infection. And approximately 340 million people are already infected, out of which 28 millions are in India. And if we see the death, approximately 17 lakhs deaths has occurred worldwide, out of which 3.25 deaths have occurred in India. The death rate is variable from countries to country. On an average, it is 2%. In some countries, it is up to 4%. In some countries, it is 1% also. But by and large, it is around 2% death rates. The positive finding about COVID infection is, you can say, positive ray of hope. Almost 80 to 90% patients are either asymptomatic or having only mild disease. 3 to 4% are having moderately severe disease who requires ICU admissions and every type of sports like ventilator, non-invasive ventilator, and then the various, you can say the sportive treatment in the ICU. Rest of the patients are for mild to moderate category who can either become milder category with treatment, or sometimes they change into moderately or severe category depending upon patient to patient and require treatment like this. Briefly, let's discuss who are the people at risk for developing severe disease. I have just enumerated few examples: the older age, more than 65, I would like to say that I have kept deliberately age 65, although guidelines say 60 years, but our personal experience says the age group between 60 to 65 years is not so vulnerable as expected without any comorbid condition. Then most important other risk factor become the cardiac patient with coronary interventions like angioplasty, bypass or valvular surgery. They are at high risk. Then patients with moderate to severe congestive heart failure, the commonly known as heart failure because of severe heart impaired functions. Then the patients of uncontrolled hypertension, patient of cerebrovascular accident, or you can say the brain stroke. Then peripheral artery disease patient like you can say who are having gangrene type or other say, ischemic symptoms in their legs or arms, etc. Then patient of deep venous thrombosis, that is those patients are having swelling, edema, as well as pain in the lower limb because of various reasons. The patient of chronic kidney disease with or without dialysis, then diabetes mellitus of long-standing duration or uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. Then chronic respiratory disease like COPD, chronic interstitial disease, or other chronic disease which Dr. Bharat Gopal will be telling. Then certain immunocompromised patients like cancer patients who are on chemotherapy or who are on radiotherapy, and other collagen vascular disease like ulcerative colitis, or you can say the others SLE type, then various transplant patients who are at risk of developing moderate to severe COVID infections. What are the post-COVID sequelae? If we see larger the number of infected patients, we will be left with large number of patients who can develop post-COVID symptoms. Like as we have told, millions of persons have developed infection and only death rate is about 2%. Rest of the patients who have recovered are vulnerable to one or other post-COVID sequelae depending on their clinical situation. So number of the persons who are susceptible to post-COVID sequelae are increasing day by day as the infection is involving larger population throughout the world. If we say what are the sequelae, so we can divide into a general category symptoms. Fatigability is one of the most important features which almost everybody is facing after recovering from the COVID. E.g. fatigability after doing some work, after standing or in the evening, he feels fatigue. Then generalized feeling of weakness, persistent low-grade fever, persistent cough, then psychomotor features like sleep disorders. And out of sleep disorders, insomnia is very, very important and common features after recovery. Then the depression. About depression, I would like to add that many COVID recovery patients have various grades of depression because of many reasons. They can have depressed mood, they can have even suicidal tendencies, and this can be due to, you can say, the isolation if they are admitted in the COVID ward, or you can say the grief because of loss of some dear one in the family which has occurred recently, or they can be financial issues because there may be loss of job, decreased amount, or the lockdown effect of laborers and traders and federals. So these all things are leading to large number of patients having psychosomatic features who needs psychiatrist treatment as well as the advice of the treatment. And this is increasing day by day. Then the most common thing is respiratory rate related sequelae. COVID main target system are lung and the other respiratory system, and almost all the patients who are symptomatic, whether in acute stage, subacute stage, or in post-COVID, or having one or the other respiratory system like sequelae. And to explain this, I do have with us Dr. Bharat Gopal, who is my close friend, a senior pulmonologist, and very well versed with the subjects, who will explain you the symptoms from the respiratory point of view and their treatment. Then let's focus on cardiac and vascular sequelae, which is my subject for today's talk. In briefly, I would like to explain in simply way what are the symptoms and what is the possible treatment. If we say mild symptoms in cardiovascular, let's say palpitation is very common, gavrat is common, and again E.g. fatigability, these are the common features in mild cases. And treatment for them, just reassurance, adequate rest, good nourishment, and sometimes they require mind tranquilizer. This symptoms will go off with passage of time. Moderate and severe cardiac symptoms, there are many. Say, let's first discuss the rhythm disturbances. Rhythm disturbances means patient's pulse rate, or you can say heart rate, they varies. So in some patient there is a tachycardia. Tachycardia means increased heart rate. Patient will have palpitation or restlessness. If this tachycardia can be simply sinus, it is just a benign thing. Sometimes we say PSVT, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, in which heart rate can become up to 160, 200, again causing discomfort. This PSVT normally requires some IV injection in a hospital to control it. Then the next common arrhythmia is atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation means, in common language, irregular pulse rate, which and fast rate, which a patient can feel discomfort and various complicated related to it. Similarly, is the atrial flutter. So these symptoms or these tachyarrhythmias are also very common in post-COVID condition. They require medical treatment as well as the expertise treatment from a cardiologist. Then in some patients, rather than tachycardia, there is bradycardia. Bradycardia means heart rate is slower. In fact, any virus infection can lead to slowing of the heart rate. It is known as sinus bradycardia. So sometimes heart rate, which normally is at lower limit, is 60, it can come to 50, sometimes 48 also. But as long as your blood pressure is normal, patient is not symptomatic, this rate is self-controllable and you don't require any treatment except reassurance. Then sometimes we get more higher degree of bradycardia in the form of AV blocks. AV block, we say when the heart rate becomes less than 40, 30, sometimes we call it complete heart block. We have seen many cases after COVID or during COVID like this, and sometimes patient requires temporary pacemaker insertion or even permanent pacemaker insertion because of this AV blocks during COVID infection also and after post-COVID infection also. So these are common rhythm disorders we can see in post-COVID situation, also during COVID infection active phase also. Then the next important thing is fluctuating blood pressure. There can be hypotension. Hypotension causes in post-COVID situation can be in patients who have severe heart failure, left ventricle dysfunction, you can say the cardiomyopathy type symptoms, who can have hypotension, or it can be drug induced. We use excessive dose of antihypertensive drug or other drug which can cause hypotension, or poor intake, dehydration, poor, or you can say the excessive fluid loss, they can lead on to hypotension or decreased blood pressure. Most of the patients of hypotension require some IV intervention in the form of IV fluids or other inotropic agent, and most of the time they require hospitalization for treatment of hypertension, except in some cases where it is drug induced, where if you stop drug, this can be cured. So this is also common during post-COVID. Another feature is uncontrolled hypertension. In patients who are already hypertensive, there can be sudden surge in the increased blood pressure after COVID or during COVID infection. And those patients with hypertension was not taking treatment, earlier were having only mild symptoms. Now suddenly their blood pressure is increased enormously and they become symptomatic also. In third category, those patients of hypertension who were taking regular medicine, but it was controlled with those medicine. But now with COVID infection, this blood pressure has become uncontrolled. They require further increase in the dosage of medicine or addition of another medicines to control the hypertension, which is very important. So we need strict control as well as compliance with appropriate medication and lifestyle changes. And we need to consult a specialist, your family physician or a cardiologist, so that the blood pressure is controlled. Remind you, if blood pressure is controlled, the various drugs given during COVID and post-COVID, like oral anticoagulant, they can precipitate intracranial hemorrhage or in brain bleeding in the brain if blood pressure is controlled. So it is very important to control the blood pressure. Then the one of the most important, or you can say, common question is the increased episode of CAD or coronary artery disease and other vascular events. So with the post-COVID or during COVID, there is increased frequency of angina on the heart. That means patients get, you can say, heart pain after walking or effort. There can be unstable angina, you can say the heart pain during rest. There can be increased severe incidence of myocardial infarction, commonly known as heart attacks. Then if you say the peripheral artery disease in the limbs, then it can lead to various ischemic symptoms in the form of claudication, means pain on walking in the legs, or sometime in extreme cases, gangrene of the foot or limbs, depending upon the condition. There can be deep vein thrombosis of the lower limbs, where patient gets swelling, pain, redness in both lower limbs. Then if it goes in extreme stage, it can be a pulmonary embolism. That means the clot from the veins of the legs goes into the arteries of the lungs, pulmonary artery, where these arteries, if blocked, can severely cause hypotension and decrease oxygen saturation to the blood. And then in the next stage, there can be cerebrovascular accident or brain stroke. There can be increased frequency. One thing I want to share with you, the incidence of myocardial infarction in both these COVID wave last year as well this wave. I want to share my personal experience in our institute. I would like to say that our hospital, the Maharaja Agharsen Hospital at Punjabi Bagh, is one of the 3 top cardiology center in entire Delhi, both in quantitative as well as quality wise for cardiac intervention. Last year, during last episode, we had almost similar number of coronary interventions as before COVID, except for a month. But now this year, we have more than 50% reduction in the cases of myocardial infarction during this episode. Although we are saying there are more chances of clot formation, but the various possible explanation for this may be we are using certain medicines more frequently nowadays, like low molecular weight heparin or oral anticoagulant or anti-inflammatory agents more effectively, which can prevent clot formation. The second explanation could be that during this wave, besides coronary events, patients are having more of respiratory disease, more of hypoxia, more of other non-cardiac complications. So they are admitted with those complications, and the cause of death becomes non-cardiac most of the time. Hence, the incidence of MI or other thing are underreported. So these are the possible explanations, but it is definitely there because the trend reflected in our institution, being a large cardiac center, must be there in other centers of the Delhi also. This is just a piece of information. Then let's understand what are the possible causes of increased risk of coronary events. The most important first one is the decreased oxygen supply as a whole, and oxygen decreased supply is related to the lungs as well as the respiratory system, which Dr. Bharat Gopal will be dealing. But as far as we as a cardiologist are concerned, if there is a decreased oxygen supply to the myocardium means heart muscles, and heart muscle is supplied by the coronary artery. If due to any reason oxygen is reduced in these muscles, then we do have tendency of ischemia, either angina, unstable angina, or heart attack. Second possible cause is there is an increased tendency of clot formation in COVID infections due to various chemical reactions, which this clot can be formed in coronary artery, causing heart attack, can be in the peripheral artery, leading to, you can say, the gangrene. It can occur in the brain artery, leading to brain stroke, or in the clot can be in the leg veins, which cause deep vein thrombosis. The mechanism is the same, manifestation are different. This clot can be abdominal artery, leading to the abdominal pain and obstruction and vascular things. Then the third important cause is the inflammation. The inflammation process is very important causing factors in COVID infection. This inflammation starts usually during second weeks and onward it goes up to 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks. And this inflammation can be detected by various markers, which usually do. You must have heard we do the, you can say the CRP levels, you can do the D-dimer level, serum ferritin levels, and other markers, which are increased, and we can gauge whether the trend is rising or they are decreasing, and the treatment is guided upon these factors. So these inflammation are as a result of various cascade of chemical reaction which occurs in the body after infection part by the virus proliferation stops. Then the inflammation part, the chemical are released, and these reactions or the change of reaction produces various complications which include respiratory hypoxia as well as thrombotic episodes throughout the body. The next important factor is stress or fear factor. Because of infection, everybody has stress, everybody has fear, everybody has fear of the death. These leads to various chemical release, adrenaline release, which again causes vasoconstriction, increased episode of cardiac complication, not only during active infection, but even after recovery also. Then there are certain microvascular dysfunctions of the smaller vessels, capillaries, platelet dysfunction in COVID infection. Earlier history of coronary artery disease, if patient was already having coronary artery disease, definitely they do have more tendency during this COVID infection for having, you can say, more episodes of coronary events. Then there are already existing vulnerable plaques in coronary. Sometimes what happens in younger patients also, even without COVID, younger patient, a lot of younger patients do have acute myocardial infarction because they are having unstable plaque in the arteries, and suddenly there is a plaque rupture which causes sudden clot formation in the coronary, causing to heart attack. So this do occur even without, you can say, COVID infection. Once they have COVID infection, this tendency is suddenly increased, so they can precipitate in younger populations also. You must have heard there are certain younger patients who have suddenly died without any cause. This is because of this reason only. Then if there is family history of coronary artery disease, peripheral artery disease, CVA, then again in those family, because of genetic reasons, they have more tendency for clot formation and for coronary episodes. Then what are the basic possible treatment of coronary or vascular episodes? The most important thing is we should have very high degree of suspicion in all post-COVID patients. And we should not ignore any symptom and try to correlate whether it can be a vascular episode symptom. So early detection and treatment is the, as per guidelines to CAD treatment, is the key message which each one of us should follow as a cardiologist also or as a patient also. Patients should also not ignore their symptoms, should always tell their physician or cardiologist for timely treatment for coronary disease. Then we should identify high-risk patients who are likely to develop cardiac or vascular event. We have already discussed who are the high-risk patients who can develop COVID or non-COVID. So we should have special, you can say, counseling and special care for these types of patients. We should do coronary intervention like angiography, angioplasty, or CVABG even in COVID positive patient as per guideline, because these are life-saving procedures. So in our hospital, we have been doing from day one coronary interventions, even in COVID positive patient. Many times patient of acute heart attack comes to our institution. We directly do angiography, do angioplasty. Later on, when we send the, you can say, the COVID test as a routine, it turned out to be positive. So we treat them as per cardiac, then as per COVID status, we discharge them. Because many patients who have heart attack becomes positive COVIDly incidentally, they are in the category of asymptomatic or mild disease. So they can go home with home isolation. Few patients who are in moderately severe category, they also have coronary episodes. In those cases, definitely we like to defer the intervention because their other complications, respiratory complications, hypoxia complications are more as compared to cardiac. So we try to stabilize first. And if they are having heart attack, we try to give thrombolytic therapy. You can say the injection which can cause dissolving of the clots, which can help on temporary basis and sometimes on long time basis also. And later on, when patient becomes stable, to sustain intervention, we try to do interventions at appropriate time to save further damage. Then for continuing this, you can say treatment, optimal pharmacological treatment, including thrombolysis. That means those patients having symptoms, we need to titrate the dosage, we need to increase some other, you can say the medical treatment so that patient plaque can be stabilized, symptoms can be better. So we have to be careful. Sometimes coronary intervention, I have already told, sometimes pacemaker implantation is also required in acute phase also. Whenever there is a complete heart block, even if it's COVID positive, we have to do temporary pacing, and whenever possible, we have to do permanent pacemaker. And I can proudly say we have been doing all those things in our institution from day one without bothering whether patient was COVID positive or not, because life-saving procedure with proper care is more important than thinking about COVID and things. Then use of dual antiplatelet drugs, we are usually giving after coronary intervention or all cardiac coronary patient. You can say the commonly known as ecosprin, or you can say clopidogrel and other newer drugs. So in these situations, we should give at least 2 antiplatelet drugs to prevent further occurrence. In acute stages, we use low molecular weight heparin, which is cornerstone of the treatment nowadays in COVID cases also, specifically whenever there is an inflammatory phase, whenever there is a rise in CRP or D-dimer level, we use this low molecular weight heparin. This is a life-saving or game changer to prevent further clotting or further complication. Then proper use of blood thinner drugs like oral anticoagulants. I will like to share with you, commonly people are asking us whether we should show blood thinner for injections, for vaccine. This blood thinner, we mean oral anticoagulant. Actually, the dual antiplatelet, ecosprin and other things, normally we don't, in technically language, call them blood thinner. They are antiplatelet drugs. They do not cause any harm. They need not to be stopped before any vaccination, before anything. Blood thinner, specifically the oral anticoagulant. Nowadays, we have newer oral anticoagulants which are as effective as injections and safe, and we don't require do repeated blood tests to know whether they are effective or those is normal or not. So they are more in use, they are more convenient in use, and they have proven efficacy equivalent to low molecular weight heparin. So we call them newer oral anticoagulant, and we are giving these type of high risk patients even after discharge for 4 to 6 weeks oral anticoagulant, which prevents the further clotting and further episodes of coronary as well as DVT. Then we need to give psychological, moral support and counseling of the patient depending upon their risk, depending upon their vulnerability, so that we can serve the society and prevent this coronary episode. Thank you for your patience. I will be happy to share some of the questions at the end after the Dr. Gopal said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. I request Madam Ritu Bhatia ji.
Sir.
Ji, ma'am. Please kindly introduce our another Dr. Saab and invite him.
Yeah, Dr. Bharat Gopal. I've already introduced Dr. Bharat.
So I'll share my screen.
Please, sir, start.
So thank you, Dr. Subhash. I think, I hope I am audible and my screen is visible.
Yes,
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Yes.
Okay. So firstly, thank you, Rajesh ji. Thank you, Ritu, for inviting me. It's a different forum. Speaking to people who are intellectuals and professionals in a different field is always very, very tricky. I think you will understand if I ask you to take a talk for doctors, it will be very difficult to formulate a talk. So I think if I go a little bit overboard, just forget it. I try to keep it very simple. See, the issue today is that, as Dr. Subhash rightly pointed out, that there has been such a bad surge, much more than last year, that we now, unfortunately, are going to have a lot of people who are going to be left with some degree of sequelae or the other. So I think my talk, and it's not actually a talk. I was just going through a lot of questions which are being asked by the audience, and a lot of them actually Dr. Subhash has already answered in quite great detail. So if you hear these small presentations, a lot of questions would be answered. It may not be possible to answer one-to-one specific questions. And I would, since I've been doing a lot of these education programs over the last 1.5 months, I would request people to keep their question answers to the fact, because if you ask me, is my dose correct? I think Dr. Subhash and me cannot give you an answer online without going through the whole process. So let's try and keep our questions to a generalized form so that it can benefit most of the people. So our target today is trying to learn about post-COVID syndrome. Now, if we go back last year, we were all taught and we were all spoken that this is a highly infective disease, right? And this was the biggest problem with this, which we actually felt. And we were very clear that unless we do and take measures, this is going to go all across the country. Somehow, by God's will, last year we dodged the bullet. We thought that we have overcome. And if you look at this slide, this 1, 2, 4, that means one person infecting 4. This was not the exact scenario last year. And probably this last 1.5 months, it's something close to one person infecting 10, because the whole families, whole buildings, whole community was getting positive. You would talk to one patient and then he will say, my whole family is down in the next 24 hours. So that was the rate of transmission. And why I bring this up today is that you are all learned professionals. And as Dr. Subhash very rightly pointed out, that you deal with so many families as chartered accountants and business houses. And you have to get it across to them that if we do not take adequate care now, we will not be able to prevent. There is still a large number of population which is vulnerable. There is a large number of population which is unvaccinated. There's a large number of population which is not had the disease even now. And if we don't take care, be prepared for another surge very shortly. So I think that is why I brought these 2 slides. We have to understand that we can stop the spread of the agent by isolation, by isolating ourselves. We can, obviously, vaccination is going to be one of the paradigm shifts. It is going to be something which is going to actually help us in countering COVID. It is not the only thing. Please don't go home with a message that once we are vaccinated, we can just shun away with all the social distancing, masks, hand washing, and isolation. I think that will never be there till pandemic is over, and we are not going to be safe till everyone is safe. So I think that is the most important thing we need to understand. So we have been very badly hit by second wave. You can look at the graph. I think you guys have much more understanding of graphs than us medical people, but look at where we actually were around 15 days back. And thankfully, all over India, it is coming down. And now it's up to us how we actually maintain it down. We cannot probably have another surge now to actually take care of. This is one of my patients last year. If you just read through and if you can see, she's a 54-year-old who got admitted for COVID, and she's a housewife. And after 14 days, after a mild phase, because that, if you remember, last year we were even admitting people who were elderly and mild and who did not have facilities for quarantine at home. So policies were different and we had beds. So after 14 days, she was negative and we sent her home. And when she came to us in follow-up, and this is what she told me. She said that after returning home, I have suffered from excessive fatigue, developed swelling under my eyes. These are her words. Even after a month, I find it difficult to work, have prolonged headaches, easy fatigability. I have recurring breathlessness, palpitations. My sense of smell and taste hasn't returned. And it was almost 3 months before I felt somewhat okay. So, last year when this patient came to me, I said, no, it's all okay, because we had less number of people. We had less number of people coming and reporting symptoms to us. But this is something which we are going to actually find more and more now. As Dr. Subhash said, a lot of people are going to come back with one symptom or the other. And there is one study which actually showed that up to 80% of people who actually recover may have one symptom or the other. So that is something very, very important. I'll try and answer a few of the questions which I have actually seen in the chat box, and Ritu can actually give me a detail of the questions in the end, and then me and Dr. Subhash will be answering. Whatever I've seen, I'll try to answer side by side. So are these long-term effects of COVID-19 actually there? This is an article which came 6 months back in a journal called as Nature. This is more of a non-medical journal, but it's compares to all natural sciences and everything. So this was COVID-19's lasting misery, and the scientist is Michael Marshall. And he beautifully described how many people were still battling fatigue, lung damage, and array of other symptoms, which unfortunately were not being looked into. Now, very important points. Dr. Subhash said only 2% actually die. Very right. So not everyone dies. But then what happens to those people who actually become moderate to severe, maybe not the mild ones, but moderate to severe, and these will have some amount of sequelae. And as I said, there are various studies. There are people, UK studies showed 10%, but there are many, many studies which go even up to 80% if they take fatigue and breathlessness and mild symptoms also as part of sequelae. So these are very important. And the other very, very important, one thing is there that I'm a pulmonologist, I'm a chest specialist, and I would actually tell you that this COVID is not only a chest disease. This is a mistake which a lot of us have actually done when we felt that COVID is only a lung disorder. I think this is a disorder which encompasses the whole body. It is more of an internal medicine or a medical problem. And the problems which you feel after the patient has recovered are not only respiratory, but you will have a lot of non-respiratory burden. Cardiology is just one of them. So I think it is very important that though lung is going to be the major organ involved, but the other organs will also need to be taken care of by various departments. So we'll have to actually get used to a post-COVID life. This is just don't go bother about the details, but just this is to bring home the point that even as doctors and as public, we actually look at week 1, 2, 3. This is how we are told. If we complete 15 days without a problem, chalo sab kuch acha ho gaya. Now we are scot-free. We are now having an immunity passport. We can go and do whatever we want. But this is not true for most of the people. What we also need to look at is from day 4th week onwards, and there will be people who will have some sort of symptoms and some sort of issues which remain even persistently up to week 12 or 6 months. That means from 3 to 6 months, these patients could be having some sort of post-COVID issues. And I think this is something which we need to understand. Because rather than actually telling you how I treat, I would rather focus on what as a public you need to know. So as doctors, the problem is that we don't stick around past that acute stage. And as patients, that is the problem also. Nobody wants to come back for follow-up once that week 3, 4 is over. Once you are fine, you feel you are okay. Nobody wants to actually come back and get assessed that how the COVID has hit their lungs, brain, cardiac problems, emotional abilities, all those things. So it's a long tail of recovery. And I think we as public, as audience, we need to understand that we have to be careful for any new symptom, any new development of symptom, which occurs even once that week 3 is over, right? We always used to think that week 3 is over. I think that's great, but we need to actually look into these things also. So there are 3 major types of post-COVID issues. And this may be because of the lungs or whatever. There is one thing called as long COVID, which we must be reading in newspapers, because one thing what has happened in last 1.5 years is that the media has focused so much on medical terminologies and medical parts that I think every person in India is now a doctor. I think my patients probably know more about CRPs and D-dimers and CT scan scores and remdesivirs and newer drugs than probably what we knew around 6 months back. So they have all geared up and know everything. But unfortunately, sometimes little knowledge is very, very dangerous. So we need to understand there is a term called as long COVID. There is the second problem of post-COVID things is multi-organ effects of COVID-19. Cardiac and pulmonology are just 2 parts of that. And finally, there are effects of COVID-19 treatment. A lot of drugs which we use, the intensity of hospitalization, the duration of hospitalization will also lead to post-COVID issues. So these are things which as audience, as general public, we need to understand. COVID is just not those fever and coughs and breathlessness and desaturation which occurred. There is a lot beyond those things which we need to understand. So we can call it long-term COVID, chronic COVID, post-COVID, long haulers. These are all the same terms for people who do not improve even when you are nearing 12 weeks of illness. So this is a large maybe gamut of symptoms which are there. Brain fogs. People feel that they are just disconnected from this environment. They have it, they are as if they're into a different world altogether. Dr. Subhash told about fatigue, muscle pains, loss of concentrations, memory issues, chest pains. These are generalized anxiety, generalized things which these patients come back to us. And do we actually know? I think we still do not know everything. So right from pulmonology to neurology to cognitive issues to renal, every organ system may be involved. Just look at this. Every organ system from head to toe can have some degree of involvement in COVID. You will be surprised. I saw a patient I did not know at that time, few months back, who came with that after COVID, I'm losing my hair, right? So I had no clue that probably hair loss could be one of the patient. And it is now reported that up to 20% of post-COVID recovered patients may have hair loss. So see how our knowledge is evolving is very, very gradual. This is a new disease. So our knowledge is also evolving on the job. It's just that every day we learn something new. Pulmonology, I'll just tell you that a lot of these people who have lung issues will come back to me with breathlessness, decreased exercise capacity. They're not able to walk up to a toilet. They have desaturations because everybody has a pulse oximeter. So they complain that they have oxygen which goes down when they go for passing motion, when they go and pass urine. So even at small activities, they will have hypoxia. If you are able to do follow-up CT scans, you may find a lot of these patients may have fibrosis. So fibrosis is something in layman terms, scarring. So if you have any person gets injured, किसी को चोट लगती है तो आपको scar बनेगा. So it's almost like that. There is an injury to the lungs which has occurred, and that is leading to scarring. So what this scarring is going to do, that it may lead to breathlessness and it may lead to more difficulty in breathing. So these things need to be assessed. You need to come back to your pulmonologist or your physician, and you need to get the testing done so that he can assess both clinically and by simple tests like lung function test, which is a very, very simple spirometry where we can know how much your lung capacity is. If required, we can just ask you to walk for 6 minutes and see how your oxygen actually falls. These are such simple tests which you can come and get done, and the doctor will get a lot of information. And if required, we can do maybe CT scans, and if required, we can do even pulmonary angiograms through the CT. Now, here I would like everybody to know that please do not go and get your CT scans on your own. A lot of people come back to me. I am week 3. I saw a question also like this. कि मेरे 3 हफ्ते हो गए हैं, मैं वैसे ठीक हूँ, मैंने अपना CT स्कैन कराया, मेरा स्कोर पहले 16 था, अब 17 है, तो अब मेरा क्या होगा? So these are things which we need to understand, that these are evolving things, and you please do not get them done unless I, as a treating physician, order it and I need it for my planning of treatment for you. Please do not get these CRPs, D-dimers. There was a question from someone which I saw, that when should I get a CRP D-dimer? How frequently it should be repeated? Absolutely no need. If you are asymptomatic, you are okay. There is no data which shows that you have to keep assessing your CRP D-dimers. These are important when you have an acute phase of disease. What we are discussing today is recovery. So please, unless I need it for some other reason, please do not get your CRPs and D-dimers done again, because this was one of the questions. So I hope that those people who have asked those questions in the chat box, a lot of them do not have the names. They are like anonymous, but fine. If you feel that your questions are answered, I think it would be nice. You can just say yes there, so that we don't take it again in the end. Okay. So moving forward, one of the most important things which we have, why I bring this anxiety and depression and obsessive symptoms, why I bring it, because as a pulmonologist, I deal with a lot of people who come with breathlessness, and I have seen that 30-40% of them are actually people who have anxiety and they come with breathlessness. कि मुझे सांस नहीं आ रही, मुझे बहुत घबराहट हो रही है. So these are people who are actually having the lung function is fine. The CT scans, if done, will be okay. They will have mild disease, but because they are anxious, they will come back and tell me that they are breathless. And also insomnia. A lot of my patients who are obese will have something called as sleep apnea. जिनको खराटे आते हैं, दिन में बहुत नींद आती है. I have seen a lot of patients of late in this surge that there were people who never actually went to a doctor for these complaints. And then when they got admitted, everybody was targeting the oxygen, because these people by nature will have an oxygen which is going to be on the lower level. So even as doctors and even as patients, unless we know that this is a disease which is there, we will be probably aiming for wrong targets when we look at oxygen. So just to keep you in mind that all the pre-existing illnesses need to be managed. Finally, effects of COVID-19 treatment. So this is also another effect which is going to be very, very difficult when we are dealing with post-COVID state. We know how much black fungus, white fungus, yellow fungus, everything is there, all colored fungi have been described. So what we need to understand that once you are having COVID and your immunity is disorganized, that is the reason that all these problems occurred. And then we have used drugs to actually control that immunity. A lot of these patients will be prone to infections, and they may be fungal infection, but they may be even a lot of people are coming back with urinary tract infections. People are coming with other bacterial infections. There are well described literature now that you can have diabetes post-COVID recovery, even in people who have not taken steroids. So as part of the COVID gamut, sometimes you have diabetes which can occur in the recovery phase. And finally, when you are having fatigue, you are lying down, you will have a lot of people who will come with osteoporosis. We already have a large population which has vitamin D3 deficient. So a lot of these patients will come back. And why I bring down is because when you have your bones of your chest wall become weak, you always feel you are breathless. So a lot of these patients then come back to me. So unless I, as a doctor, know that this could be part of the low calcium or low vitamin D3, then I would be treating them more like an asthma or a post-COVID lung disease. So that is also very, very important. So what we need to understand is that we are already probably into a new wave. This is a new wave of chronically ill, slow healing survivors, right? So just mark these words. These are people who are going to be ill. They will go back to work, but they will be slow healing. So they will not be able to give 100% at their workplace. They could be our doctors. They could be our nurses. They could be your accountants. They will go back and they will not be able to give you 100% and we should be prepared to actually take care of these patients. It's all over the world. It is not in India. It is all across the globe. It has been described. So you will have coronavirus survivors plagued by absolutely debilitating fatigue. So this is a problem which we need to understand. So what is the way forward? I told you this is a new phenomena. We are learning about it. People have fatigues, and I said these can impact family life, work productivity. There are a lot of things which still do not know what to do, what time to intervene, what is the time that we actually intervene that these people do not develop COVID in chronic illness. What can we actually do so that they are not predisposed to other things in the future? So these are things which we are still learning. But what I believe, and I think what is going to be the future is going to be to work as a team and open more COVID-19 recovery clinics. These are now going to be specialized things where people, maybe a cardiologist, a pulmonologist, psychiatrist, physiotherapist, dietitian, actually pool in their efforts and actually take care of these people in a holistic way. These are people who will require full support for a few months to get them back into a normal life, because I think more than us, you understand the way the economy is going. If these young people who have got hit on this time, if they do not recover properly, I think it's going to be a very, very big collateral damage which has occurred. We will not realize this. We will realize this after 3 years, that these people who are brilliant in their works probably are not going to be working the way to their capacity. And I think as doctors, as society, we need to now start looking at these post-COVID recovery clinics. We need to have all the specialists actually pooling in. Hospitals have to understand that there is a need for COVID-19 recovery clinics. There are a lot of questions which are being asked about exercises. So I wanted to bring this important point that exercise will improve fitness, it will reduce breathlessness, it will improve your muscle strength. It will also reduce your stress, improve your psychosocial impact. But remember that before you actually initiate any of these, you need to understand that it has to be after getting trained by a physiotherapist or a doctor. Because I have had people, one of my patients actually, once she recovered, she was an elderly, she started doing a lot of exercises, looking at these YouTube videos, and she fell down and very recently dislocated her shoulder. So I think these are things which we need to understand, especially if we have elderly at home who are very fond of doing exercises. Please be around so that these people may not suffer accidental fall injury. These are just small types of breathings which we describe. We have pursed lip, we have diaphragmatic breathing. And if you want, we can, since this program is being recorded, I think you can pause and see these later on if you. So we can have incentive spirometers, which are very popular nowadays. And these are various different type of exercises which we can follow. These are also very good if you do it as a routine, even if you don't have COVID. So if you actually increase your exercise capacity, it is going to be very, very good, even in a way of preventing any other lung infection. So finally, be patient. This is a very landmark study which was done. Look at that red part is as red, very, very bad. Okay, the green is good. So look at the acute COVID lung. This patient is absolutely nothing. This is almost full, both lungs are gone. After 60 days, there is few green areas coming. And after 100 days, the red is less, the green. So as a patient, be patient. That is what I tell there are not many drugs which are going to help you. There was a question that somebody has asked me that take antifibrotics. We use it. Let that be a decision of doctor. There is no generalized recommendation for any of the drugs in post-COVID state. It is more symptomatic management. It's a cardiac problem. It's a lung problem. We will have to symptomatically manage. But as you see, and what my experience of last year was, and I hope that carries on this year, last year I had many hundreds of patients who had post-COVID issues. And finally, after 2.5, 3 months, most of those patients actually became better. So I think once we look at from that point of view, we would actually know that we have to be patient, and with God's grace and with our body actually healing. I always give a very simple analogy to all my patients कि अगर किसी की हड्डी टूटती है तो आप उसको कास्ट लगा के छोड़ देते हो कि हड्डी हमारी अपने आप जुड़ जाए, ठीक है? So it is almost like that. We have to give time for body to heal. Follow up it with a lot of good nourishment, a lot of good diet. And I think gradually the body actually heals and takes care. So most of the patients there'll be a very, very small percentage which will require specific therapies, but they have to be under follow-up. And this is only once you are under follow-up from a doctor. So let's stay strong. COVID is not over. We still have to fight together. Please take my words. I remember that even in Jan Feb, when we were telling people, our relatives, our colleagues, that it's not over, so people were not believing. So it's still not over till the last case actually is gone. I think there is the bomb can explode anytime. But when we are together, I think we will be able to overcome, and we will be able to kick COVID out of our lives and get our lives back. And it has been a long time. We are all, even as doctors, I think we are probably super stretched, and we want to go and meet you people physically rather than through the masks and shields. Thank you so much. And I am sure that there will be a lot of questions, and I think Dr. Subhash and me won't mind even if this program continues for some extra time, when we can answer maximum number of queries. So thank you. And I think we can hand it over back to Ritu ma'am.
Yes, sir. I'm taking one by one the questions I got. Otherwise, sir, Dr. Subhash Gupta has answered many of the questions posted in question and answer area. So I'm taking those which I have received through WhatsApp. The first thing, do the patients who survive COVID, how long it take to recover it completely?
तो जैसे मैंने आपको कहा कि अगर आप देखेंगे कि कोई भी पेशेंट्स जो हैं, मैक्सिमम रिकवरी जो देखी गई है वो 6 months में देखी गई है. So maximum is around 6 months. Follow up is there, and majority of people actually get better by 6 months. Agar if we talk specifically for lungs, right? So most of my patients, around 2.5-3 months is the time when most of them would have recovered their lung symptoms. I think for Dr. Subhash, probably he would be able to answer. But अगर किसी को कोई corrective cardiac problem है, किसी को arrhythmia है, किसी को cardiac problem, I think Dr. Subhash ने यही बताया कि probably those can be taken care of early and can be actually corrected the way we corrected non-COVID patients. So it makes no difference what the issue is. Am I right, Dr. Subhash?
Yes, sir, certainly. Certainly, we treat them as if non-COVID patient, but on priority basis. Definitely, they should not ignore their symptoms.
Right. The second question will be, sir, role of physiotherapy exercise during COVID and after COVID, specifically for lungs and heart.
Yes, for lungs, it is definitely useful, specifically in those cases where fibrosis are developed or those cases where saturation is still low after discharge also. They need chest physiotherapy to increase their lung capacity. As far as heart patients are concerned, the role of physiotherapy is not directly related to heart patient. If their saturation is normal, if there is an angina, we have to treat angina. If there is heart failure, we have to treat heart failure. So physiotherapy as such has no active role in the management of angina or heart failure.
Uska mainly the main thing is that the overall rehabilitation is basically when we do a pulmonary rehabilitation, we indirectly are also going to do a cardiac rehabilitation because मैं डॉक्टर सुभाष को हमेशा ये बोलता हूँ कि हार्ट और लंग्स बिल्कुल साथ साथ चलते हैं. So lot of our patients are so common कि हमें नहीं पता चलता किसका patient है. So lot of times when we are actually training these patients for our pulmonary rehabilitation, the cardiac, unless that patient has a gross angina, something as he said, obviously it's not going to work. You need medicines. But the overall cardiac stability, if there's a patient who is cardiac stable, the patient who do lung exercises will get a better cardiac output also along with that. So आप जब exercise करेंगे, धीरे-धीरे आपकी heart और lungs दोनों की power अच्छी हो जाएगी, and you will be able to gradually get back to normal life.
The next is one of my known got COVID, but their oximeter continuously gave false reading. The patient landed up in ICU with 85 oxygen. What are the other indications which a patient need to see?
So देखो अगर if somebody has a wrong meter, obviously that's something which we can't do because this has actually happened 2 days back with one of my patient was recovering, and I'm talking about a post-COVID patient. She was doing very fine for 10-12 days, had a very small fever for 99.3, which if you remember Dr. Subhash, that it's a very common symptom which we are getting now in our post-COVID. And I think it is more because our immunity is actually getting back to normal. So that is the reason we get these low-grade fevers for some time and they get better. But this patient looked at her oxygen and it was 89. That's what she told me. In the morning, she called me and she said, I had 89, I started using concentrator. Because आजकल concentrator तो सबके घर पे ही आ गया है. I feel that it is like a nebulizer. So now I would actually like to tell everyone who is listening that please, oxygen is a drug. Oxygen is not जो हम हवा ले रहे हैं. When you start using oxygen through concentrators, it is a drug. If somebody has something like a chronic lung disease or COPD, और आप उनको खूब सारी ऑक्सीजन दे दोगे, what you are going to actually find is that you are actually making them even उनकी जो थोड़ी बहुत respiration आ रही है उसको भी आप बंद कर रहे हो. So please जो लोग सुन रहे हैं, आप ऑक्सीजन अपने आप उसको लगा के, जैसे होता था ना कि हम ऑक्सीजन बार में बैठे हैं, प्लीज उस तरह से मत करिए. I don't think that's the correct way. So this lady put her oxygen and she got admitted. And when she got admitted, the saturation was 96. Obviously on phone, I can't tell them to take it off. And she, for 24 hours, she was managed all tests. I suspected that, as Dr. Subhash was saying, maybe it's a clot which has come, or maybe it's an MI, got an echo done, got a pulmonary angiogram done, everything normal. And finally, everything was normal. So we can, if in today's era, even if you have a wrong reading, I think it is always better to go and get it checked because it is better to be safe, number one. But number two, कुछ ना कुछ उसके साथ और symptoms होंगे. You cannot get an oxygen which is 85 without any breathlessness, although happy hypoxia. कि आप hypoxia होने पे भी, यानी कि ऑक्सीजन कम होने पे भी बहुत आराम से बैठे, that is a known terminology. But they will have other symptoms also. ऐसा, it's very rare that somebody would actually have and have nothing. He may be suppressing it, may not be feeling to the extent that oxygen is. But I think more or less, we have to look at the overall symptoms. So if you have a patient who was having symptoms for 7 days, has 85 on the 7th day, I would not ask them to actually wait and think that machine is not working, to please reach the hospital. I think, Dr. Subhash, you agree?
Yes, I definitely agree. Only decrease in saturation once is not the symptom. We should see whether patient is breathless or no. Then on set oximeter, there is a pulse rate also. If pulse rate is normal, it cannot be a pulse rate is normal, patient will having hypoxia. Another important thing is, as earlier discussed by Dr. Bharat, sometimes on my exertion, like going to toilet, passing urine, or going to a bathroom, there is a transient decrease in the oxygen level. It can be sometime 85, 86. That will be for a brief period. So we should have a patience, wait for 2 to 3 minutes, calm down, and then see the saturation. Then we should act accordingly, because this is a common finding, specifically on patients who are compromised or who are COPD patient. So it is not necessary that every patient will require 94.5%. In chronic patient, chronic COPD patient, we say 90% and above you should maintain. Even if it is 90%, you are not breathless, respiratory is normal, pulse rate is normal, at rest you are okay, then it is acceptable. On exertion, in initial stages, there will be little breathless, but as the time passes, it will improve. That is what we are looking for.
The next question, sir. Children with asthma or high allergy history, what precautions should be taken before and during COVID?
I think that's a very, very important question. And let us even not bother about children, but for anyone who is an asthma patient, the biggest precaution which he has to take is he has to take his inhalers very, very properly and have to be taken properly on time. Okay? Even if you don't have symptoms, if you are a diagnosed asthmatic, you have to take your maintenance inhalers. That is the only way you can actually prevent, because by chance, if you get COVID, if your lung function, if your inflammation of your lungs is controlled because of the inhaler, the chances of it deteriorating would be less. This is what we have seen actually in research and in our own patients. People who are not taking inhalers and they landed up with COVID will have a tendency to have more severer form and more worsening in future. So that goes without saying, even for children. So I think that is very, very important.
सर एक और इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन मैं खुद पूछना चाह रही थी,
जी
वो ये
बताइए।
है कि कई बच्चों में एलर्जिक टेंडेंसी होती है, कुछ अस्थमैटिक होते हैं। कोविड के अंदर जब क्योंकि थर्ड वेव जो आने वाली है, दैट विल बी डीम्ड टू बी द मोर डेंजरस फॉर द यंगर चिल्ड्रंस, तो उस केस में जिन बच्चों को अस्थमैटिक या एलर्जी की प्रॉब्लम्स होती है, उसमें ये डिफरेंशिएट करना बहुत मुश्किल लग रहा है कि ऐसा ना हो जाए, तो क्या प्रिकॉशंस और पेरेंट्स को लेना
आप
चाहिए?
जो कह रहे हैं, आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं। सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम बच्चों में क्या है कि जो आप जिसको एलर्जी कह रहे हैं, क्या वो अस्थमा है कि नहीं, ये डायग्नोज करना अपने में मतलब मुश्किल है। बहुत बारी मैंने देखा है कि हमारे अपने कोलीग्स, बच्चों में क्या होता है कि अस्थमा एक बहुत ही टैबू टाइप का वो है। अगर आप समझ रहे हैं कि किसी बच्चे को अस्थमा लिखना, द पेरेंट्स वुड फील कि ये तो क्या हो गया, अस्थमा कैसे हो गया हमारे बच्चे को 4 साल की उम्र। तो हम उसको लिखते हैं एलर्जिक ब्रोंकाइटिस, नेजोब्रोंकियल एलर्जी, ये सब चीजें लिखते हैं। दे आर ऑल पार्ट ऑफ द सेम डिजीज, राइट। सो सबसे पहली चीज तो पेरेंट्स को ये समझना है कि अगर मेरे बच्चे को चेंज ऑफ वेदर में बार बार छींके, जुकाम, सांस फूलता है, मेरे को नेबुलाइजर देने पड़ते हैं, तो ये अस्थमा ही है। अगर मुझे चेंज ऑफ वेदर में अस्थमा होने के मेरे बच्चे के चांसेस हैं, मान लीजिए जुलाई के अंदर बारिशें आती हैं, हर साल दिक्कत होती है, तो इस साल क्योंकि हम पेंडेमिक के थ्रू गुजर रहे हैं, तो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है कि मुझे जून के अंदर अपने डॉक्टर से मिलके उसके इनहेलर्स पहले ही प्रोएक्टिवली शुरू करवाने, so that we do not actually land up in a situation where the allergy inside is already there, patient gets COVID, patient gets a lung issue because of COVID, and then the lungs are not good enough to actually fight through it. So अगर आप इस चीज को समझ रहे हैं, एडल्ट्स में तो बड़ा आसान है क्योंकि हम PFT, लंग फंक्शंस और ये सब करके डायग्नोज करके बता देते हैं आपको अस्थमा है। क्योंकि बच्चों में अभी ये बहुत सारी चीजें यूज होती नहीं है। देयर आर लॉट ऑफ टेक्निक्स, देयर आर लॉट ऑफ मशीन्स व्हिच आर अवेलेबल इन, स्पेशली इन अ कंट्री, इन अ सिटी लाइक दिल्ली। ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि अवेलेबल ना हो, बट समहाउ बहुत बार हमारे एज सोसाइटी, एज इवन एज डॉक्टर्स, वी आर नॉट अवेयर ऑफ द लेटेस्ट इन थिंग्स व्हिच आर अवेलेबल इवन फॉर चाइल्डहुड अस्थमा। सो आपका पॉइंट बिल्कुल वेल टेकन है। कभी कभी ये डिफिकल्टी होती है, पर मैंने जैसे कहा कि पेंडेमिक की सिचुएशन में बहुत सारी चीजें हमें पलट के करनी है। हमें उसको एक बेनिफिट आउट डाउट ये दे के देना है कि हम ये मान के चलें कि इसको दिक्कत ना हो। सो अगर मुझे इफ आई हैव टू err ऑन द साइड ऑफ कॉशन rather than feeling कि चलो जब होगा तब देखेंगे। वो that can work in normal circumstances, but till we are clear that the our children are safe, the vaccination somehow starts being developed for children, then only I think we will be able to say कि ठीक है, जैसे हम normally करते थे वैसे। डॉक्टर सुभाष, एक क्वेश्चन था, आई थिंक आप अगर लेना चाहें। वो लोग
Yeah.
एस्पिरिन और उसके बारे में बहुत कंफ्यूजन हो रही है कि कब तक लें। या पीपल हु आर आस्किंग कि मैं इकोस्प्रिन कब तक खाऊं, मुझे दी गई है। और वही कहानी की क्या इकोस्प्रिन प्लस जो नए एंटीकोगुलेंट्स हैं दोनों लेने चाहिए या नहीं लेने चाहिए? तो ये आप थोड़ा सा अगर संक्षेप में बताएं लोगों को, क्योंकि
Yes,
लोग
I
बहुत
have.
बार बार ये
Uh,
आपने हालांकि बताया था, आई थिंक एक बार हिंदी में भी सबको बता देते हैं
I have
बहुत सारे
already
लोग।
answered an individual. As far as prophylaxis of oral anticoagulant Ecosprin is concerned, Ecosprin I don't think plays significant role in prevention of thrombotic attacks who are non-coronary patients. Those patients who are already having coronary or peripheral vascular disease or CVA, then we give dual antiplatelet. One of them is Ecosprin or Clavix or both of them. And if we have to give as a prophylactic for increased D-dimer, then there is a role of oral anticoagulants, specifically newer one. So in those cases, prescribing Ecosprin after discharge is not, I think, according to me, of any direct benefit. But oral anticoagulant is definitely for a variable period of 4 to 6 weeks. Specifically
मुझे
in
लगता है
those.
सर, मुझे लगता है कि ये क्वेश्चन इसलिए ज्यादा लोग बार बार पूछ रहे हैं बिकॉज एक बिलीफ है कि जैसे कोई डायबिटिक है, ही इज डेफिनेटली मोर प्रोन टू गेटिंग कार्डियक इवेंट्स, कॉर्नरी इवेंट्स, रादर देन द थ्रोम्बोलिक इवेंट्स जो कि हमारे मान लो वेन से आ रहे हैं। तो क्या जो डायबिटिक्स डिस्चार्ज हो रहे हैं उनको हम मान लीजिए हम एक एंटीकोगुलेंट तो दे ही रहे हैं, पर आपको लगता है उनको साथ में हमें एस्पिरिन देनी चाहिए? क्योंकि वी नो दैट उन सिचुएशंस में
those high risk like diabetes or you can say uncontrolled hypertension or cardiomyopathy, there definitely we should give dual. That is what I said, Aspirin plus oral anticoagulant. But those younger patients who do not have any other comorbid condition, but we want to give prophylactic, then the role of only oral anticoagulant is enough, in which D-dimer was this.
I think so. Probably that maybe answer everybody's query. इस पे काफी लोगों की थी.
One more question. What is the ideal antibody post-vaccination? And then I infected with corona. I got it tested. Result shows 39,000 antibody. Is it good to move outside? 39,000
हो ही नहीं सकता.
39,000 cannot be.
हो ही नहीं सकता. गलत. इनका repeat कराएं.
The antibodies, as far as antibody level is concerned, different lab had different control level, but by and large we assume that more than one is positive. Sometimes it can be some variable differences. So as far as infection as well as vaccine is concerned, the mechanism for antibodies is same after whether the patient is post-infected or you can say the post-vaccine. The idea is to develop antibodies significantly. So higher the antibodies, we assume there will be more resistance against infection, whether after infection or after vaccine. So mechanism is same in both the cases. As far as antibodies are concerned, it has to be more than one, but larger amount of antibodies is a belief that they will be protecting for a longer period or more protection as far as antibodies are concerned.
But I think इसका कोई ऐसा रिसर्च नहीं है जो ये बता पाए कि अगर आपकी 50 से ऊपर है तो यू आर मोर प्रोटेक्टेड है, आपकी अगर 100 से ऊपर है. So we believe that if you have antibodies, because it's not only about antibodies, there is something called as T cells, जो कि एंटीबॉडी से फर्क होते हैं, तो वो आप मेजर नहीं कर पाते. So we believe that even if your antibodies come down after 3 months, your T cells will be able to protect you after till about 1 year. तो अभी जो रिसर्च है वो यही कहती है कि अगर आपको इन्फेक्शन होती है या आपको वैक्सीन लगती है, your protection may actually go up to a year, even if your antibodies may become undetectable after 3rd, 4th month. तो हमें that is what research is showing. और हम उस चीज को क्लिनिकली अब नहीं देख सकते क्योंकि उसका कोई ब्लड टेस्ट नहीं आता ये देखने के लिए कि टी सेल्स कितना चल रहे हैं. मतलब दे आर ऑल एक्सपेरिमेंटल टेस्ट. एक किसी ने क्वेश्चन, फिर मैं आपको एक जल्दी जो क्वेश्चन मुझे सामने चैट में दिख रहे हैं. somebody asked that क्या मैं अपने ब्रोंकाइटिस के लिए दोबारा से सीटी स्कैन करा के देखूं मेरी लंग्स अच्छी हैं कि नहीं. As I said, unless your doctor advises, please do not get any test. That's a very humble request. Please do not unnecessarily self-medicate or self-investigate. So I think that is from me and Dr. Subhash. I think that would be a very humble request that अपने आप अगर करा के फिर हमारे से आएंगे पूछने कि अब हम क्या करें, तो मैं तो अपने पेशेंट को ये जवाब देता हूँ कि अब खुद ही बता दो क्या करें, because जब आपने खुद कराया है तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि क्यों कराया है. So it's very tough for us to actually, when we do not know what we intend to treat, so you give me something, COVID के बाद कुछ ना कुछ तो निकलना ही है. तो उसका मेरा intention अगर treatment का नहीं है, it becomes very, very difficult to actually decide. There is, Dr. Subhash, there is a question. I think you are senior most here. Vaccination safe for 18 to 44. I think it's important that we do some public health messaging also in this forum. कि लोग पूछ रहे हैं 18 to 44 में लगवाएं कि ना लगवाएं.
Yes, certainly. Vaccination is safe for 18 to 14, and even now it will be safe after 12 years also. It is also coming up. The vaccine
So I
is
think
being
that's very
taken also.
And sir, एक और क्वेश्चन कोई पूछ रहे हैं, लोगों ने पूछा है कि क्या, because you remember there was lot of myths की clotting हो जाती है कोविशील्ड लेने के बाद. आपने और मैंने तो कोविशील्ड इकट्ठे ली थी, तो हम खड़े हैं यहाँ पे.
I have answered this question. I don't think we have found any evidence of clotting, at least in India or at least in Delhi. We have not found any evidence of clotting.
Very good. So I think we should go home with the messaging that all those who have already taken vaccine, well and good. Who have not, please go and try whenever your chance is there. Please get it done for you and your family, because as I said in the beginning, that is one part of the 4-pronged things of social distancing, masking, hand sanitization, and vaccination. So these are 4 pillars on which we are going to kick COVID out of our country. So एक भी अगर lax होगा तो हम नहीं चल पाएंगे. अगर घर की 4 बुनियादें हैं तो उसको अगर एक भी पिलर टूटेगा तो फिर घर नहीं खड़ा हो सकता. So we have to understand कि अगर हम ये सोच रहे हैं हम वैक्सीन लगा के बाकी तीनों को छोड़ के हम पार्टी कर सकते हैं, अभी वो समय नहीं आया है. वो समय आएगा, hopefully जल्दी आएगा, पर तब तक के लिए हम सबको as a society we have to be very, very clear that we need to follow all 4. So get yourself vaccinated, follow those COVID appropriate behavior things which we have always been saying.
Another important message is, a lot of people ask if they have taken 1 dose of vaccine or not a single dose of vaccine and they get COVID. Now, when they can get the COVID vaccination? So usually recommended time, whenever you recover from COVID, then at least 8 to 10 weeks after your recovery, you get 2nd dose or 1st dose of vaccine, depending whether you have taken 1st dose or not. This is the usual recommendation.
अब जो सर लास्ट चाहिए 90 days, अभी 3 दिन पहले जो मिनिस्ट्री ने दिया वो 90 days कर दिया. I think that is more to do with because WHO का भी जो है वो ये मानते हैं कि 3 महीने तक एंटीबॉडी रहती हैं. So they are trying to use those antibody stock, that vaccine stock for people who are unexposed. That is the reason behind it.
That's right. That is more of a logistic.
That is the reason, because
one person is saying that his father got negative on 15th of May. Still his TLC is 15,000 and he has taken 3 courses of antibiotics. Now what should be the course?
We have read this question. Now I think this TLC count, whether he was taking steroid or still taking steroid, we don't know, or any other evidence of infection. If he is febrile, oxygen saturation is normal, we should just stop all antibiotics, wait for a few days, and if he is symptomatic or this TLC persistently high, then consult a physician or a specialist. At present, he should stop antibiotics and monitor other symptoms.
What are the ideal doses and duration for which we should take vitamin C and zinc?
Oh, this is not written anywhere. Zinc is normally 50 milligram per day, and usual duration is during COVID period, maybe two weeks after that. Vitamin C also, their role is not proved scientifically, or you can say any research. Yes,
I think अगर आप अपना अच्छा खाना खा रहे, if you're having a lot of antioxidants in your diet, you're having fresh fruits, green leafy vegetables, most of your minerals would be already taken care of once you take a good diet. So I feel we are overdoing. I know of people who are taking vitamin C 1 gram for 1 year since last March. They are taking zinc also taking twice daily for 1 year. Now there is a new study which has come up that a lot of zinc actually precipitates the chances of more mucor, black fungus or mucor. So ऐसे कोई भी ultimately, जैसे मैंने कहा, जब हम ये कह रहे हैं कि ऑक्सीजन भी एक दवाई है, तो जिंक हो गया, विटामिन सी हो गई, ये सब दवाइयां हैं. So जितनी डॉक्टर ने स्टेरॉइड, मतलब ये सब चीजों को आप खुद तो बिल्कुल भी, अगर आप कह रहे जी हमने तो पढ़ा था कि उससे इम्यूनिटी बढ़ती है, तो आई थिंक आपने ये भी पढ़ा होगा कि अच्छा खाना खाने से इम्यूनिटी बढ़ती है, तो आई थिंक वी शुड, दैट इज अ सेफर ऑल्टरनेटिव देन हैविंग मेडिसिन्स.
Sir, एक क्वेश्चन हो रहा है. I was cured in January 21 from COVID and now is okay, but my CRP test is showing 18 point.
Oh, I have answered him. I don't think it is related to post-COVID now until unless he's showing some chronic lung disease or showing some fibrosis in the lungs or some cardiomyopathy type things. So he needs further evaluation before saying it, but not directly related to COVID. Our report is wrong. So he has to be evaluated for this.
Right. I think
एक्चुअली डॉक्टर सुभाष ने मैक्सिमम क्वेश्चंस को तो डायरेक्टली आंसर कर दिया था जब तक लेक्चर चल रहा था.
Yes.
So people have got the answers directly also.
Yes.
Rajesh sir, will you please take up for the winding up?
बस थैंक यू मैडम, आप वोट ऑफ थैंक्स दीजिए. डॉक्टर साहब का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, इतने अच्छे शब्दों में और सब सारी चीजें क्लियर कर दी. सिम्टम्स भी बता दिए, डिप्रेशन में क्या है, रेमेडी क्या है, फिर इन्फेक्शंस के बारे में बताया, फॉलो अप करना है, घर पर ही सारे डॉक्टर ना बने, सब डॉक्टर्स की जरूर सलाह लें. व्हाट्सएप पे आजकल इतना ज्ञान बट रहा है कि सब डॉक्टर हो गए, और उसके लिए तैयार भी रहे कि यदि कोई फिर बाद में दिक्कत आए तो और क्या करना चाहिए. वैसे मैडम सारी चीजें बताई हैं, क्वेश्चन भी बड़े अच्छी तरह से लिए सबने, और मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि मैम आप वोट ऑफ थैंक्स प्रेजेंट करें. थैंक यू. ओवर टू यू.
Really, sir. I would really thank Dr. Bharat Gopal and Dr. Subhash Gupta for sharing their valuable time with us. And जितनी भी हमारी queries थी, हमारे mind में हमारे questions थे, वो बहुत अच्छी तरह से answer हुए. I really thanks both of them. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Have safe days.
Thank you जी.
COVID
Sir,
free
बाद
days.
में queries आती हैं आपके phone number share करने के.
Yes,
I will share them.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Thank you जी.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you Rajesh जी. Thank you Ritu
थैंक
जी.
यू सर. थैंक यू.
Thank you.
Bye Dr. Subhash.